I found this creator named Marissa and she has a video that came out 11 days ago. It's called The Death of Dining Out: Why Restaurants Are Empty. The kind of synopsis of this video is many people, specifically in our age range, I'm 28, so from maybe 28 to young family, I would even go as far as 40s, are feeling this idea of like quality is down and prices are up for going out to eat. So in this video, she's kind of compiling TikToks and the More Perfect Union video. And there's an operator that shares that they keep portions big, but they also have to bend to the world around them. They have to raise costs. They can't just keep prices the same way, and that there is a significant rise to cost when it comes to restaurants. Then the complaint that we keep seeing popping up of Cisco restaurants serving the same frozen food over and over again. And then there's even complaints from brands like McDonald's taking away their dollar menu. There's a commenter on TikTok who describes dystopian slop presented as a nice meal. The generation not seeing this generation not seeing the value in these meals. There's some pushback that consumers should know a chain like Chili's is not private labeling their own food, but there's some surprise that they are all getting it through the same distributor. And then quality of service. Quality of service is something we can get into. This is hit or miss, but I do think overall, like, if you're going to a Chili's, maybe you shouldn't be expecting like the greatest service in the world. But all that to say is, I have a couple of thoughts on this. My first thought is, I worry for the future of dining out, and I think what many people in the farm to table movement were warning of was the commodification of food, in the sense that food would not be diverse. We'd kind of be just eating the same thing, and we would become mass market consumers. And this could be also part of what they were saying, but I think what is happening adjacent to that is the commodification of food in these major corporations and restaurants is now giving restaurants a bad name, which in turn hurts the independent restaurants that we're trying to protect. So, for example, if someone in their 20s doesn't see the value in going out to eat, and you often say we're early on things, and they go see like the frozen meal that's just as good, but they can eat from their home and they don't have to have bad service. I worry that maybe not the next generation, but a few generations down the line, dining is maybe seen as something that is going out to a restaurant is maybe seen as something that could be unique or a special experience, rather than something like you and I, where we go out to eat regularly, and it's almost like I worry that in the future becomes a point where it's like, oh, my grandparents used to listen to the radio, my parents used to watch VHS tapes, and it's like I think the
Or
big
go dancing.
go
Like, go
dancing.
dancing. Yes.
I think the big worry for me is the rise in price, the lacking of perceived quality, the poor service, and just the commodification and lack of understanding of food. And then this, like, the whole push from corporations is really destroying dining in 2025 going into 2026. And that this will have a impact that in a few generations might change the fact that people even go out to eat. Like, people in a century might not even consider going out to eat. It might be like something they've done. It's like it's using a typewriter or listening to a record player. That's my meta, like this worry. I don't think that's happening anytime soon, but the trends we're seeing now, and I will share more later in the episode. I agree with this video. The death of dining out is here right now. People cannot afford it. It's very hard. So any restaurateur that is putting up great experiences, putting up great food, I feel like has a lot of leverage right now. And I actually think there's a lot of opportunity. But if you're just kind of sailing on you're resting on your laurels, like in your restaurant, you're going to struggle right now. So my initial thoughts, your reaction to this.
I agree with your last point, and that's kind of where my head went in seeing this, is the opportunity for people who can deliver on exactly what the consumer is literally telling you that they want.
Yep.
And so I think that that is something that is, you can cut all the assumptions out of it. You can kind of be like, any of these over and above things that we potentially think that the consumer maybe wants. I saw a piece that came out a couple days ago, I think. I didn't read it fully, but it was more of a headline skimming because it seemed very pessimistic. Almost like a backlash to Will Guidara and Unreasonable Hospitality, talking about how guests have unreasonable expectations because of seeing some of these things played out on TV. And then they go to a restaurant, and because they're so used to seeing like the Instagram influencer who's getting just like total VIP treatment at a restaurant, and it doesn't match what that person happens to have when they sit down at the table next to the window. It's like that creates this gap that, again, that's the, what is it, like happiness is expectations minus reality, whatever. I think that there's something there that people start to feel. And again, as you're saying, not only do you have that experience, but then at the end of the experience, you're slapped with this bill that is higher than you've ever seen before. Not just like from this restaurant, but probably like in your life of this caliber of restaurant that you happen to go eat at. You're like, oh my goodness, this is how much it cost. And so all of these things, as we've been covering on the show, kind of culminate in these moments. You can see by the views, the fact that this person has really tapped into something in the kind of like broader culture. Same with that Cisco story we covered a couple weeks back. Where do we go from here? I think that it is, again, like a difficult to paint with a broad brush here. But I say that on one hand, and then I also look at like casual restaurants closing, and now we just can cover like Alinea losing their third star on the top of the show here. It's like, oh my goodness, I think this is affecting the entire industry. And people are tired. Like we see that also in that piece that I referenced where people like front of house wanting to show up, quote unquote, in a reasonable hospitality manner in a world where like they're already overworked, potentially underpaid. I saw a big thread on X today talking about how hotels and people working in those environments being underpaid and not having a career ladder to climb, it like almost disincentivizes them to like go above and beyond and deliver an experience for people. What I will say from an optimistic perspective for the people listening who do want to have their own concept someday, I think that there is a little bit of like talking about a concept I've been harping on for, it feels like years now, of the middle being completely hollowed out when it comes to restaurants. And I think as we're starting to see automation get better and better, scale from a CPG perspective, being able to iterate fast and get nationwide distribution through all of these different means that we've been covering on the show. And then all the way to the other side, we have genuinely seen, as we covered on the top of the show, there is a demand for high quality 3 Michelin star restaurants. In Chicago, there is only one, as long as Smith continues to retain their star. It is like, if you want to push for some of these things, it's like people complain that people are giving out Michelin stars, quote unquote, too easily. And so it's like, if you can make the economics work, it's like there's arguably never been a better time because people are so starved and disappointed in other restaurant experiences that they've been having lately. And I just like, again, want to also like acknowledge the fact that there are bad days that happen in restaurants. And then those are the days that, you might have a bad piece written about you and you can have the other 97% of your week is stellar and you guys do awesome. And, it is one of those, like, that's why Michelin, as much as we harp on it and give it crap sometimes, it is one of those things where it gives you that time perspective to say like, okay, get back up again. And then just like continue on going forward.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
I think it feels like we're in the upside down of COVID. I'm rewatching Stranger Things for the new season. So we're in COVID, restaurants were empty because of the pandemic, but like we had such cool takeout experiences and we were striving to keep restaurants alive and many failed, not on their own volition, but because of the restrictions and everything else. Where at this time, people just don't want to go out. I have had this thought where I'm calling it the Uber Eats problem. The Uber Eats problem for me is I can go on the Uber Eats app and I'll scroll craving something. And there's not one thing on the Uber Eats app that I can't make better at home at this point. Because all these takeout places, all these, companies have really gone to like the lowest common denominator product. There's nothing I can find on Uber Eats that I can't make. And I think just as much as we talk about food knowledge lacking, I do think there is a big lacking in food knowledge because of platforms like TikTok, because of platforms like YouTube. Your consumer is smarter. They're so much smarter with what they can do, the food they can produce at home, how they can eat, what they can prepare. So like for me, like that's another aspect of this. Now, do I think restaurants need to like reassess? Yes. Do I think we're never going to eat out again? No. I do worry though that like if we don't have like for me, for example, like Chipotle, Sweet Green, which we'll get into, Shake Shack, were like big corporations that offered a ton of value that I would go to a lot and have that brand loyalty. And then you'd have the Alineas and you'd have these restaurants where I'd aspire to look at. For the generation now, that's 18, 19, 20, coming out of or going into college, that have limited funds where everything's way more expensive, what is that brand for them? What is that food restaurant brand for them? Like, they don't have that, and it's because everything's so much more expensive, and I think a lot of these companies have, been kind of priced their consumers out. The reason our Chipotle video did so well is you go on that comment section, and everyone's like, "Well, I can just make this better at home. Why would I spend all this money?" It is expensive. There's a video in the YouTube video where a girl's going, "I bought 2 fillet of fish or 3 fillet of fish and it was $18. Like, what are we doing here?" And so I think, and then the last point I'll make is we went to Costco this weekend, and there was a birria taco plate. It was like 8 tacos, rice, birria, consomme. It was like 24 bucks. And that lasted my girlfriend and I 2 dinners. And it's like a little expensive for birria maybe, like, but at the same time, we don't have to go anywhere. It's 2 meals at home for each of us. So it's like you're always competing. And the reason I've stressed this is you're competing with grocery now, you're competing with all this. And so you don't have to be a Linea in your neighborhood, but you have to offer a service or cooking skills or dish manipulation or dish compositions that people can't get at grocery stores. They can't find, or you do it so well that they crave it. So like that's my thing. And I think restaurants, there are opportunities here, but I worry about the next generation not being allured by restaurants because larger restaurant chains are putting such a sour mood on the whole experience. And I guess my question to you, Justin, is why, or why do you think restaurants are empty? Why do you think dining rooms are empty? What are your thoughts on like the state of the restaurant in 2025 as we end the year?
I think it's an important question that any operator can sit down with themselves first and obviously kind of like collect your thoughts on this and then maybe pose it to your team, which is what would prompt or motivate or encourage or excite somebody about coming to see us in person? And if the answers there are maybe a little lackluster or you haven't revisited that thought in a while, you're going to probably fall victim to some of the things that we're talking about on this show. And I say that not in a fear-mongering way. Like, you have the opportunity to get ahead of this and really consider, are we putting resources to something that like consumers just don't care about? Or there is like, that's when we talk about value. If you really kind of like boil it down, it comes down to things like expectations. It comes down to things like, how does it compare to this other experience that I had? It comes down to, again, Ray's talking about all these concepts of going to a place that has mass preparation of this thing. And it's like all of these other things that provide value to you and your girlfriend, Ray, like not having to commute. My wife and I talk about a lot about like having to find parking when we go to find a restaurant. Do you know what I mean? Like all of these things that are like not even food related. Like you can't put on the menu some of these things that like really matter to the person who you're feeding in the position of the guest.